Welcome to the Vet Show. This is for you, by us. We're old guys for the veteran motocross world. Coach Robb, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, man. Here we are, episode number 1. When's the last time you can say you did something for the first time? And here we are.
Well, we started the Coach Robb shows. Well, you did that. That was because you'd done shows in the past, but I kind of joined on and we kind of do some different stuff. But yeah, man, this might be the first one. This might be my very first episode 1 of any podcast.
Well, I want to thank you for having the vision of it. You and I have been doing some brainstorming on it for quite a bit, trying to figure out how do we make a show that's just for our fellow older riders. Now, I don't know what old is, right? To me, I still think someone that's 30 is extremely young. With me being 55, I think 40 is young. However, I know someone who's 40.
Well, yeah, I'm getting old, dude. And I feel it every day, but I don't know. I think you could probably call 30 plus guys vet guys now. And the only reason I say that is because we have like the Over the Hill gang group here in California. I think they're actually throughout the United States, I believe. But and you got to be 30 to join that group.
Okay, there you go.
Race, and it's the quote unquote vet group. So we have the Sierra Old Timers. That's a group that I'm a part of out here in California. Great group of guys, but again, it's like 30 is the benchmark. So I would say 30 would be the milestone when you become an old vet guy. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I like what you're saying. If there's clubs out there that are saying, okay, your point of entry is over 30, we'll respect that, especially the Over the Hill group with Richard Hurtado. He's one of my dear friends, and he actually was at the camp with us there at Zeb's place at E Street. And yeah, I mean, lots of cool things. I agree with you. Let's let the clubs, since they say it's 30 and above, that's going to be the vet club.
All right.
And this is a show that's exclusively dedicated, and we will do our absolute level best unless situations and circumstances require, or we won't be talking about mini bikes. We're not going to be talking about pro racing. We're not going to be talking about anything except what we, huge passion fanboys of the sport, what is it that we deal with getting to the track, from the track, balance and family? What are we dealing with physically on the bike, off the bike? There's not a subject that we won't be going over or going, let me rephrase that. There's nothing that we'll stay away from. If we're going through it as riders and racers, we know they are as well. Do you want to elaborate though? When you look at the possibility that there might be some races, what's your thoughts about maybe doing some highlights of some vet races?
Dude, I think it'd be awesome. I mean, we have Mammoth. Mammoth is a huge vet race, right? It's kind of one of those things. If you didn't race a lot, like in your younger years, it's kind of like a vet thing out here on the West Coast. I don't know how it is, on the rest of the country, but it's kind of a vet's goal to make it to Mammoth. For whatever reason, but we have Mammoth, we have World Vets, which is a huge race at Glen Helen.
Yep.
People come from all over the world. So I want to cover that, man. I want to get into that. I want to get some of the folks that attend those races on the show, get their insight.
Well, maybe we take it a step further. Maybe we actually host the show live at World Vets. Mammoth would be a little bit different logistically, but I think World Vets would be cool at Glen Helen. Maybe we can set up, get a motorhome and do a show, or somehow do a live show. We'll see how big this grows here between now and World Vets.
Well, this for me, Coach, is, and I've been kind of harping at you for a while to do something like this, because there's so many vet riders, and I think and a lot of the questions that I get personally in my DMs generally come from the older riders.
Okay.
Probably because they can relate to me a little bit better, right? If they have a question or whatnot, or want us to answer something. But there's like this big group of vet guys, right? And I think the cool thing about this specific group of people is not all of us race. In fact, a lot of us do not race.
Sure.
A lot of us do race. But I want this show to be for all vet riders, not just racers, right?
Yes.
Because there's a lot of guys like me, Coach. I just don't race much anymore.
Yeah.
I'll do a few here and there during the year, but when you get older, you don't heal as fast.
Yeah.
And you have different life responsibilities and goals, and injury is just not an option. I'm not willing. Honestly, whenever I had my daughter, I didn't have my wife had my daughter. Whenever we had my daughter, things changed for me, right? It's put you into a different mindset. Like, man, you got to be there to take care of your kid and your family. Can't risk going and get hurt, but I still love to ride. And so, I want to get, there's a lot of people like me.
Yeah.
Not willing to hang it out and hit all these races, but we still love to ride. We still want to be in shape.
Mm-hmm.
We still want to know how to ride safe. We want to know what shape that we need to be in. If we do hit the ground, we have the best chance, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, yeah. And then, of course, you got all these guys that race, like Zeb Armstrong, Rep Racing. He races Vet Pro.
So fast.
Ron Lachine. We were talking about Chicken earlier.
Yeah, absolutely.
But a lot of these guys, that we looked up to when we were younger, they're still riding. They're vet riders. And
if you really want to get down and dirty, think about McGrath at Mammoth. He's still showing up and ripping. You got Rhino. I don't know if he's able to ride anymore with his back. I mean, these were all guys that, we remember Rhino pushing that Cowie up that hill when the chain broke. We remember Emig coming out in all the black shift gear, making a statement against McGrath when McGrath was the powerhouse. Emig just won vets at Loretta's, right? You've got Jeremy winning the vet races at Mammoth. What about Mike Alessi? He's one of the most dominant guys that we've ever seen at Loretta's on 85s, and now he's winning the vet class. Like you say, unfortunately, the calendar falls for all of us at the same tempo. But the cool part about physiology is, even though you may have heard me say publicly, hey, if you breathe oxygen and you have warm blood, the physiology is the same whether you're on a 65, or I'm going to show my age here, or on a 465, right? The old YZ 465.
Yeah.
But the idea here is, unfortunately, as we get older, like you alluded to a little bit earlier, we don't heal as quickly as we used to. We do need a little bit more rest. Well, the $1 million question is how much? And we're going to dive into some very vet-specific things that you guys, because it isn't a one shoe fits all. There isn't a one formula that fits everybody, but we will go through a lot of the checks and balances so that our listeners could figure out how much is too much, how much is too little, how do I evaluate to add a little, how much do I need to take off if I'm not recovering. We'll go through food, hydration, injury, strength training, the mental aspect. I mean, think about how frustrating it is, like you say, 30 plus. I'm 55 years old and I'm on the line with a 30-year-old. That's intimidating as heck.
Yeah.
But when I get it back to the principles of everybody has a clutch, throttle, and a brake, everybody's got a first turn, everybody's got a starting gate they got to get over. Now, what we do with that, size of balls, size of heart, what do we need to do on Monday morning? Risk it for the biscuit. We're all thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
Like that, as soon as your daughter showed up, that this turned into this.
Yeah.
Because it's not just about you and your bride anymore.
Exactly.
And, so I think this is a passion project of yours, and I think it's going to be a real ringer.
It is. And I just want to let the listeners know, and all the viewers, that this is for you guys, right? Mm-hmm. This is, again, like our regular Coach Rob podcast that we do. It's for the people, right?
Yes.
And we get a lot of questions from listeners and viewers on different, things physiology. Oh God,
physiologically. That's all right.
We get a lot of questions like that. We get a lot of nutrition questions and whatnot. But if you guys have any questions regarding anything vet related, whether it's nutrition, workouts, anything like that, down to, we joked, Coach, before the show, just kind of BSing back and forth. Us vet guys, man, we like nice, shiny new parts. We like A-kit suspension, and we probably don't need it. And, all the trick ECUs and everything. So if you guys want to talk about that, bring it. Like we want to talk about anything and everything vet related. So if you have a question, make sure you get it in. You can comment down below, and we'll address those in upcoming shows. But
I think that's what I want to make sure I say this without sounding arrogant.
Yeah.
If you have a question on ECUs, I've got Derek Harris, who's my co-host of the Navigating the Amateur Motocross. He knows how to build motors. I want to elaborate on what you just said. We will find a guest that will match whatever you want information on. Again, not saying it arrogantly, but we will find a guest. I'm not a master of ECUs. I probably wouldn't even benefit from buying a set of 8 kits. You got to be fast to use 8 kits, right? But there's people out there that are fast. The Zeb Armstrongs.
But it doesn't matter. They look cool.
They look cool, but what's neat about it is we're finally at a point in our career where we can afford the 8 kit.
Yes.
And a lot of us are vicariously giving our sons and daughters what we never had. We're not complaining, but I grew up on a 78 RM80 running from the police officers to ride in the orange groves on one 78 RM80 that I had to rebuild after every third ride. Yeah. And yet we're working with young kids who have 3 stock bikes, 2 mod bikes, a practice track at a facility, floating in a motorhome with a double deck trailer. That's not my world. But if you're gonna invest in yourself on those 8 kits, how cool would it be for us to bring in Derek Harris? How the hell do you even set it up? What's it actually telling you? If you put them in the comments or you DM at either Dan or myself, in fact, I'm going to ask politely, please don't DM me on social media. I don't police it very often, and I don't ever want to come across as dropping the ball. It's just between emails and YouTube and Facebook and showing my age, right? I don't even respond to comments on Facebook. I may look like the total asshole. I go in, I post, I go out. So if I don't like your picture, I am maxed out at 5,000 followers, but I don't research. I don't spend time on Facebook. I don't spend time on Instagram. I'm there to provide a resource, and then I'm out. So I apologize if someone has sent me a DM, like after I did Jace with Gypsy Tales. I didn't realize I had like 400 and some odd DMs.
Holy crap.
Which was nice, but I come across as the real arrogant jerk because I'm like, these poor people were kind enough to send me a message. I don't DM.
Yeah.
I have fat hands, and I have the largest iPhone I can get. It's still, and even with Siri, it's too much. So then, not to as Johnny Hopper says, not to digress too far, hit Dan up. He's the master of, I don't know how the heck you keep up with it all.
Yeah.
More importantly for me, because I do check YouTube and comments, because I get notifications on my dashboard when someone leaves a comment. Let us know what you want. Like Dan said, if you want us to dive into suspension, Dan, I don't know how you consider yourself. I'm not bones bacon at PC. That's for darn sure. We'll get somebody who can answer those questions, and we all benefit from it. So I love your passion project.
I know enough to be dangerous.
Exactly.
I'm not an expert,
exactly,
but I know enough to get myself in trouble at times. I'm learning this ECU thing right now. It's like that's a
whole new science, isn't it?
Yeah, I've been just learning how to do mapping, and not an expert. It's a lot of trial and error, but thankfully I've got some good people on my side where I can call and say, hey, Chad, I need some help here.
But we've always said, if we don't know the answer, we'll find somebody who does. And that's going to definitely extend into this new podcast show. The other thing, if it's okay, Dan, I want to make everybody aware of, we will be announcing on show number 2 exactly what the cadence of this show will be. So, for example, Dan and I have committed, we're going to record, seeing how you guys respond to it. We're going to put one out a month, absolutely for sure. We're going to, in the second episode, we'll let you know exactly when it'll drop every single month, so you guys can set your calendar to it. We totally respect you guys from a standpoint of time and resources. We're going to keep every show no more than an hour. So that way, if you guys are allocating, hey, we will promise you we'll be no longer than an hour. We're going to get to the point. If we have guests on, if we have to do multiple episodes on an ECU, we'll do it. But we aren't going to be the one where one show's 45 minutes, the next one's 3.5 hours. You're not sure what to expect. We'll be getting the show out once a month for you, if not more, depending on the feedback. And we will announce exactly when those will drop. And our calendars will be based on getting it in the can, getting it edited, and making sure it gets dropped on the Coach Rob podcast, as well as on YouTube. So we love these comments. And like you said, Dan, this is the people's podcast for vets. And I'm so pumped about this.
Me too. All right. Well, let's get into some, now that we've taken care of some of the housekeeping.
Yeah.
I got a couple topics today, Coach, that I wanted to get into. And
can I interrupt you real quick?
Absolutely, you can.
Can you give me some insight? Whose helmets are those over your right shoulder? Just for the sake of the fans. Who have you got?
One is Ryan Villapoto's helmet.
Okay.
One is mine, and I've got a couple other ones down there. Yeah, one's RV's helmet. I got 2 that are mine, and then the other monster helmet, I honestly don't know who gave it to me, Coach.
You know what we may have to do is we may have to have you put Villapoto's helmet on for one of the podcasts and do the show with the helmet on. And then,
I mean,
I'm surprised you don't.
could.
Yeah, I mean,
He's my guy, dude. Maybe we can get RV on. He's a vet now.
well, that's what I was just gonna. That's the only reason why I brought it up, because I thought that was Villapoto's helmet. Of course,
Yep.
you know, those monster helmets look so cool. And if AC retires, unfortunately, which I hate to hear that may be happening here, it won't be long. And I know you've got a man crush on AC in a good, healthy way.
I do.
Who's the number one in the top right over your top shoulder?
That is RV's number one plate.
And then the glove below it?
That's Tomac's glove.
Okay. When he was in Cali?
And when he was at Cowie. And
Okay.
then you can't see above the Wheaties box. That's another AC 92 jersey. Huge
And
AC.
what's the one directly behind you adjacent to AC's? Lawrence? Okay.
Jets.
Oh, Jets. And then who's below that?
That is the one below that. I can get out of the way here, Coach. That is my most prized possession jersey of all. That is my daughter's first jersey.
Very cool. Very cool.
That's the one that I hold near and dear to my heart.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time. I just, a lot of times you'll see somebody will start a show and you got all this cool collective stuff and nobody ever talks about it. So on show number one, as you were just getting, and again, I apologize for interrupting you, but I'm like, doggone, those helmets look pretty bitchin'. And
Yeah.
I mean, not many people have a red number one plate, especially if it's signed. And then I was kind of curious on the one glove. I thought maybe you and Michael Jackson were getting kind of tight or something there. But no, it makes sense keeping it all team green all the way through.
I'm starting to get kind of into the memorabilia
Okay.
stuff. But I'm not like, I don't know, Coach. I've been around these guys so much, with my role with Main Event Moto, and of course I do a lot of the media and stuff for them. I don't like asking guys for stuff.
Sure.
There's certain guys that just mean a lot to me, and like AC is one of them. AC, RV, Tomac, those guys. You see a theme, right, Coach?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Kawasaki guys,
Kawasaki
guys.
back.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. I probably could get more memorabilia, but I just kind of try to stick to the stuff that actually means something to me.
Well, and you just made me think of something. We'll have to mentally commit it to memory to talk about it. You were spotted on a red bike for a couple months, which I think, I thought maybe you were having a stroke or something. I was like, what's he doing? He's getting on the wrong bike and he's putting a pipe on it and he put a graphics kit on it. And I was like, what is going on here? I knew you could be leaving green.
No, I still do like my Honda. I still have it.
Okay. Wasn't it a project bike though?
It was a project bike. Yeah, it was a project bike that we did for Main Event Moto, and we had a lot of really great sponsors that threw parts in, and it's a bitchin' bike, and maybe that leads us into a good topic. Uncanned topic here, and that is motorcycles for vets, right?
Yeah.
Coach, I was riding a 450 for quite a while, right? Well, since 2010, I've been on 450s. And when did you do the camp at Riverfront?
That would have been
2021.
I was going to say it's got to be at least 3 to 4 years ago. Yeah.
So right before that camp, I bought a KX250.
Okay.
4-stroke. And because I was just, Coach, I was over the 450s. Like they have so much power now that you just, if you're not, I don't race anymore. I'm not in the absolute best shape of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you are in great shape as a vet, 450s are a lot to handle.
Yeah.
And they're hard to ride. It's hard to ride a 20, 30-minute moto on them. So I bought the KX250F. Okay. And I did the camp on that bike that day. And I've been on 250s ever since.
Gotcha.
And I think, the Honda is a 250 as well. I just think, man, the 250 is such a great vet motorcycle because these days they have plenty of power.
Yeah, I've never ridden my 250 wide open. I've said that publicly numerous times. I've never had that thing 6-gear pinned. You know what I mean?
They've got plenty of power. I'm 195 pounds. I fluctuate between 185, 195 typically, so I'm heavy. I'm a heavy guy on a 250.
Mm-hmm.
but they still have plenty of power to jump any jump out of a corner. And honestly, coach, as a vet rider, the 450 made me lazy because
that's what I was going to ask you, because, we used to joke that the 4-stroke made you lazy coming off of a 2-stroke. And now you hear so much that the 450s made you lazy to ride the 250.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
100%, because, when you're on a 450, you literally could be in first gear out of any corner and jump a triple. Like they have so much power that you just rely on that. And it really, you lose skill, in my opinion. And so when I jumped back on the 250, it allowed me to slow down, obviously because the bike doesn't have as much power as a 450 does, but it makes you slow down and it makes you think about the lines that you're going to take. You've got to carry more corner speed because you don't have the instant power like a 450. So for me, it really made me a better rider jumping on a 250, where I was able to slow down and get back to the basics of how to ride a motorcycle instead of relying on the power. And, these KTM, Husqvarna, and Gas 350s is such a popular bike now because it's between a 250 and a 450. That's what most vets are riding. But man, I would never tell a vet to shy away from a 250 even, because they've got plenty of power, and man, they're so much fun to ride, coach.
Well, and I've always said that you can change the gearing on them if you want a little bit more bottom end pop. Like if you like that grunt and point type of thing, throw an extra tooth on the back, and it's going to come out of there cracking pretty hard. It might sign off a little bit quicker, and you have to short shift it more than usual. But I would totally agree with you. I know when the 4-strokes first came out, remember the joke was you could almost be in like third gear, almost about to stall it, one fan of the clutch, and it's going to pull to the stratosphere.
Yeah. Where,
on a 2-stroke, good old days, you fell off the pipe and it just, took another 4 minutes to get it back up to speed, especially on the 125 and below. Have you had a chance to ride the 350s?
I have. I'm not a huge fan of the Austrian brand chassis. I just, they have such a different feel than a Japanese bike. And
is it the long wheelbase that you're not comfortable with? What is it that you're not digging with?
They're really stiff. The chassis are very stiff.
Okay.
Very stiff feeling chassis. And they do turn good. It's just the chassis for me that I just never loved. And honestly, if I had one and I was forced to ride it, I'm sure I would get used to it relatively quick. They're great motorcycles. A lot of my friends have them and ride them, and they love them. So no knock on them at all. I think, honestly, Coach, in today's day and age, people always ask me, what's the best bike? And they're all good.
Yeah.
They're all good motorcycles. I would say go support your dealer that's the closest to you, that's going to make you a fair deal, and that's going to be there to support you if something happens or if you need parts. Because I don't think there's a bad bike. Even the Suzuki's, man. Yeah. They're making a comeback. They're freaking killer motorcycles.
Well, they never went anywhere other than the fact they got annotated. It didn't update anything, still doesn't have an electric start. That a little bit of a bunny side note here. Want to make sure everybody knows that we're not here to be politically correct nor incorrect. So like you said, we're not in bed with an OEM. That's one of the reasons why we call this the People's Podcast, is we're going to tell you what we see, what we feel.
I don't know, Coach. Most people would probably tell you I'm in bed with Kawasaki, though.
No. That's okay.
I do get harassed on that one.
But that's okay, though, because what I like about it is if you go back to Jeff Ward, everybody would say Oakley, Cinesalo, Team Green. If somebody said Bailey, they'd say Oakley, JT, Honda. If they went to Johnny O'Mara, Honda, Oakley, JT. What happened to the loyalty there? And remember, the fact that you're not actually being paid by Cali, it just, you bleed green. It's what you like. And I think that's another part of what's wrong with today is if somebody doesn't agree with you, then somehow you're wrong. And like you're just saying, there's no bike's going to be a one shoe fits all. Find the one that works for you. Find the one, I loved what you said, please support the local dealer. And I'm sure he or she will give back to you. If they know you're going to be riding regularly, they're going to want to order some more parts. So it's a win-win. You've got parts in stock. They're turning more product. Zeb's got more people riding at the track because their bikes aren't broken. That's how we grow the sport organically, especially since we enjoy it. For those of you that are diehard racers, we think it's awesome. Keep racing. For those of you that aren't into racing anymore, we just want to still see people out riding and enjoying that exhilarating feeling. And we even have people who may be watching the show that are brand new to riding and just getting in at 40 years old.
Yeah.
Congratulations, man. Enjoy it. But when you make that comment, we're not in bed, like you say, not being disrespectful to the Austrian brand. I don't even think we need to put that caveat on there. And we'll say this in every show. We're just stating how we feel. If you disagree, we love it. We love people who think differently than us. Doesn't mean we have to hate each other. Let's make sure that we don't create an environment where it's like, well, he's in bed with Callie. No, he's just somebody who loves it, man. And
I do.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'll tell you why, Coach. They've always been good to me. Kawasaki's, and when I meet good to me, knock on wood,
down.
I've never had any mechanical failures.
Yep.
The Kawasaki's for me are very stable.
Mm-hmm.
They don't turn the best. I'll be the first one to tell you that. They don't turn the best.
Yep.
But they're always stable and predictable. And for me, being a vet rider, that's what I need, is something stable and predictable that's not going to do something stupid and throw me on the ground. So
wait, are you talking about your marriage or your dirt bike? You want something stable and predictable, right? Sometimes it doesn't always turn too well, but
I know.
You know what to be.
Exactly.
It's reliable. It's dependable. I love it.
Yeah.
No, that's cool.
But getting back to like the 250 thing also, and the reality of it, right? You kind of hit it on it earlier. As vet riders, right? A lot of us have good jobs. We're in the place that we want to be in life, and we generally have some extra, not everybody, I understand that, but we have some extra money to throw at our bikes, right? That's kind of the joke about vets, right? We buy shiny parts, A-kit suspension, all this stuff, and we don't need it. And you're right, we do not need it. The bikes are good stock, but we want to look cool, right? It's just simple as that. You look good, you ride good, you feel good, it's kind of goes together. But in the 250 world, as a vet rider, you're going to buy the parts to make your bike cool and fast, right? So investing money into a 250 to get a little bit more power out of them is, to me, the perfect motorcycle.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
No, it makes sense. I've not ridden a 350, I must publicly admit. In fact, I've only ridden a couple 450s just because, like I said earlier, I've never felt like I was waiting on power on a 250. So to me, it's amazing. I've said this to my wife, Michaela, almost every night when we watch Supercross. When you think about that 450 factory bike with the ECU, can you imagine what the sensation? It's got to be the closest thing to being on the spaceship, being on the space shuttle.
Yeah,
but this last weekend they showed Jet's front fender. I swear, what was it? An inch from the front tire? I mean, that thing was so low. And when they dropped that, and I know that they can play with it where maybe it's just kind of, it spreads it itself out, but I don't know. I could not imagine like literally taking a 450 and rolling that throttle 3/4 and then dragging that front brake and then starting to let that clutch out and feeling that rear end come up on a 450 and then drop it and then have 39 other guys outdoors trying to go into 4 square feet in the first turn. I picture Millville or Glen Helen.
Yeah.
Or, just no way. That's got some big balls.
It's funny because, Chad with XPR was the one that sponsored some of the engine components and stuff on the Honda that we built. And, so I kind of developed a relationship with Chad, and I know Derek at HP is great too. There's a lot of really good engine.
A lot of good guys out there.
Find a good engine guy that's in your area. That
first and foremost, understand we're not getting paid by anybody. This is a non-funded pod.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking about everybody and anybody that we've worked with, good or bad. If we've been shit on, we'll talk about that as well.
Yeah.
So continue with what you were saying there.
Yeah.
Like you said, we're not in bed with anybody.
No, I mean, I think it's important to find a good engine guy in your area. If you're not comfortable with sending your engine off to, somebody like Chad or Derek or Jamie at Twisted, somebody wants, some guys just don't want to do that. They want to be able to take it to, Joe's Motorcycle Shack to have the top end rebuilt. And I think that's a good idea. But, working with Chad, we've had a lot of conversations regarding these 450s and vet riders. And he said that every single vet rider that contacts him with the 450 is looking for an ECU to detune the motorcycle.
I believe it. Yep, I believe
it. And, that's his number one ask, is to detune them and make them more rideable. And I think you'll find that even on these factory motorcycles, the engines are built, they're built for durability. Of course, they're making more horsepower than the stock motorcycles. But you hear it a lot, like Justin Barsha, wanting the gas 450 toned down so it was rideable. So I think the perception of, man, these guys have rocket ships, that you're absolutely right. But I think they're a lot more rideable than what we assume.
Well, and take it a step further. They're more rideable based on the rider's riding characteristics, which to me is just another level of science and perfection.
Yeah.
I remember talking to Bones Bacon. I was teaching at Ricky Carmichael's University, the RCU. And that was when they actually had like a classroom environment. You could come in and listen to, they had different guest speakers. And Bones Bacon went after me. And I want to say it was when he had Tedesco and Purcell. Don't hold me to it, but I think those were the two riders. And when he was giving his presentation on suspension, he was talking about, I don't know which was which. Let's say Tedesco liked the rear wheel all the way front of the swing arm. And then you have Purcell who liked it all the way in the back. He was talking about all the different angles as that shock comes down and as, all the linkage changes and all. I was mesmerized because I don't have an engineering background. And for him to talk, he gave all the mathematical numbers of like how every 1 inch changes the angle of X that adjusts Y that affects the rear wheel. And how he, with 4 riders on the team, with riders that have 4 different specs and setups, he's managing all of that so that each rider is comfortable, is mesmerizing to me. Like you're saying, whether it's Chad doing work on a motor, whether it's Bones doing just some finite adjustments on linkage so that, and wow, when I did, we did episode number 2 on navigating amateur motocross. And in our first episode, I wanted Derek to give a little bit of his background. He's an extremely brilliant dude, engineer beyond unbelievable, comes from an engineering family. And we got an overwhelming amount of people who said, and this is going to sound harsh if you've never met Derek, but the overwhelming response was, I didn't know Derek was that smart. And I think it's just because people have never sat and talked with Derek, right? What do you get an opportunity to talk to a motor builder, a suspension specialist? They're all brilliant.
Yeah.
And Derek's on episode number 2 came back and he said, I appreciate the compliments, but there's a guy close to you that's just as smart as me, and you need to connect with him. Now, I just think that speaks volumes on his character and his credibility, where he's not like, well, if you think I'm so smart, send me your motors. He's like, there's lots of me that are out there, to your point. Some people may not want to wait 3 months to get a motor done. You find somebody that's maybe gone out and doing something on their own, builds great durable motors, but you can get it done in a relatively quick period of time because they're not backlogged with motors. But I think and we can get some of these suspension specialists to come on. I've always said that the most important, at least from a physiological standpoint, a chiropractor and a massage therapist is your best friend, because nobody's going to know your physical body other than your partner better than these two people, because they've got their fingers in your muscles, in your spine, in your bones. Well, to me, when you look at a motorcycle, like you say, the deliverability of the power and the managing of the power, it all comes down to suspension. It doesn't matter what that dyno tells you. If you can't get it to the rear wheel and, as you articulated, get comfortable with it, why is Barsha asking for it to be detuned? It doesn't fit his riding style.
Yeah.
I just think that speaks volumes.
You're absolutely correct. The suspension is so key. And I want to touch on this as well.
Yeah.
The suspension on today's motorcycles, stock, they're pretty good.
Yeah.
For the average person, they're pretty damn good.
Yep.
Barring you're not, over 200 pounds, you may want to start looking at springs and whatnot, but the suspension's good. And I think, while I'm a fan of, if you are looking for something specific, to seek it. If you're looking for stiffer valving, seek it. Go find a good suspension guy.
But that's somebody who knows what they're looking for. I think that's part of the equation.
It is, and that's what I would encourage. And vet guys are very much they're kind of at fault for this, right?
Mm-hmm.
They will buy a brand new bike. And it's going back to, wanting to look cool and just, they have the extra money to spend. It's all great, right?
Yep.
But they're famous for taking off the suspension off a brand new bike and taking it straight to their suspension guy.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of riding the bike first.
Sure.
And those clickers on your forks and your shock, they're there for a reason.
They turn.
And I always encourage everybody to start looking around and seeing if there's a setting you can find comfortable before you go making a change. Because when you take your suspension to a suspension guy, you're looking for custom valving or something custom, you need to be able to relate to him what you're actually looking for. If you take the suspension off a brand new motorcycle and take it to him and tell him to valve it, yeah, he'll valve it for your weight and your size and your ability. But if you're looking for, hey, I want a little bit more better hold up in the top part of the stroke, you need to be able to relay that to him.
Absolutely.
So he can make the valving adjustments to specifically what you're looking for. So, and again, also it's, when you have brand new suspension, that suspension is going to break in. You're going to have metal shavings from the spring, the inner tube, as everything kind of breaks in and wears in. You want that to be done before you take it to a suspension guy. So I don't know. 100%. That's just something that I've always done, is to try to find exactly what I'm looking for before I take the parts off and send it to a guy to have it done.
You can also go the other extreme. I've been at Loretta's and watched Monday's practice. And, we got a vet rider. He goes out, gets a brand new bike, sends it off, gets the motor work done, because he's got all the specs. He's had other motors built. So he goes and he gets a brand new bike, gets the motor built, gets brand new suspension, or gets it all freshened up, and then throws a brand new set of Dunlops on there, right? And he rolls out in practice. The frame is stiff. The tires are extremely hooking up. The suspension's stiff. The frame is stiff. And they'd rather go ride their practice bike. And I'm always surprised how much money and time we'll spend on acquiring these and not know how to adjust them. That's why I think it's so important to have somebody. You spend all this time and money getting to Loretta's. See if somebody local by you is going to be at Loretta's, or maybe get 5 or 6 people who buy suspension and suspension services, and you guys collectively pay for him to be there. You spent all the time and money getting there. Can you imagine if you had a guy or a girl that can help you dial in the suspension in practice, and then also as the track changes through the week, because you only get to go out, right? You get one sight lap. If you could come off the track and tell the person real quickly, this is what it felt like, and he or she makes a couple quick adjustments, and then you roll into the gate, your results are going to be a better reflection of what you're capable of, utilizing the equipment that you've invested through the resource and knowledge of somebody who that's his or her wheelhouse, not mine. And we see this over and over again. When you look at, especially talking with agents, when you look at a lot of these young kids that grow up, right? Some of these kids don't know how to change an air filter. Literally, they don't know how to. They're on such a red carpet ride. They've rolled the Loretta's in a double-decker 65 with a double-decker trailer with 2 65s in the back. They've never changed an air filter. They've never adjusted a chain. Then they get fortunate enough, they've got some talent. Mom and dad have the money to get them the distance. I'm not going to name any names here, but there's a couple riders on some factory teams that will come in and not be able to articulate what the bike isn't doing. So the suspension specialists don't know what to do to make the bike do what they want it to do, because they can't articulate it what they want. They just say it sucks. So the joke is, there's no place in your manual that you look up sucks to solve the problem. Is it too stiff? Is it too fast? Is it too slow? Like Derek said in our show, a lot of people think their suspension's too stiff when it's actually too soft, and it's going all the way through the stroke, bottoming out at the bottom, and people go, oh, it's too hard, it's too stiff. No, it's not stiff enough. Well, okay, we're sitting here comfortable talking about it on a podcast, but can somebody see that from a distance? Can you feel it as a rider to come in and know what adjustments to go? Stiffer, softer, faster, slower. That's where I always say, get a suspension specialist, spend the money and have somebody come out with you to the track and have them set up the bike, and then have them. We've done this. I don't mean to name drop here, but we did this when we were at the goat farm. Ricky Carmichael's dad would do some of the adjustments on the bike, and then you'd have to try to guess what he did. Now, this is a factory piece of equipment. Trying to get the rider to get, because especially if you go to a new color bike, you're still trying to figure things out. And then once you spend a couple months on it, hey, if the mechanic goes 2 clicks stiffer, can you really feel it? And then here's the magical question. The mechanic says that he went 2 clicks stiffer, but did he? So when you come back and you give biofeedback, if he told you that it went stiffer, did he? Didn't he? Like, we've even had some fun where we actually filmed. So the mechanic will say he did 2 clicks in. We film it. He didn't turn the clicker at all. So the rider comes back. Did the rider see a perceived, or was it an actual adjustment? I know it sounds dumb, but it's kind of like challenging yourself when you're in middle school. Do you know your math?
Yeah.
5 + 5. Well, what do you have? You have flashcards. Either you know it or you don't.
Yeah.
But then you get into these big races, and then as the track changes, whether it goes drier or wetter, rougher, smoother, like think about Loretta's. I mean, you've got a track that, I don't know about you, I've rarely seen a track that develops outside of a pro national. Well, I guess that's kind of a stupid comment to make, because there's no other race where you're getting literally 65s to 450s from semi-beginners like Cobras, even though they're very fast. They're only 6-year-old young men and women, right?
Yeah.
All the way up to the Emigs that are on the track, and they all have to ride the same track for 20 minutes back to back for 5 days. I've never seen a track shape up like that.
Yeah. It's gnarly.
Well, you can't train to that, because even if you were to go out to a local track, you don't have that concentrated amount of riders, and the track starts so wet in a good way, lots of moisture in the dirt, sun bakes it, it usually gets kind of windy, that dries it out, and then you've got literally Jeff Emig, those top vet guys, Mike Brown, Michael Lessie, and then three motos later, you've got little 65s out there that you wouldn't think change the track up, but they do. Yeah. Even though it may not G it out, but they create a little bit hook here and there. And then you're coming in the middle of that, and you've got to try to be able to adjust, but you don't know which direction to go. Now we're back to square one. Beautiful bike, handles well, has all the bling, and the thing is just bouncing around like a pogo stick, and you're pissed off. And I will say selfishly, I've seen guys that have come in on the race weekend and go, man, I've got to get myself in shape, and come to find out they're dehydrated. You go, Rob, how's that even remotely relevant? Well, you spent all the money on the suspension, but you don't know how to set it up. So you're stepping right over $1 to pick up a penny, because you don't know what you don't know. And I've had many people that we've done some initial consultations with it and look at their baseline numbers. I'm like, dude, you're in shape. You just need to understand hydration. You don't need my services. And I think that's where the suspension person comes in. Yeah, there's a couple unscrupulous ones, but they usually get called out eventually. I can name a couple companies that they used to be very big at Loretta's, and they supposedly sold all these aid kits, right? And then you bought the aid kit from this company, and then you took it to your local to get it revalved. And then the person who was working on it says, there's no internals in here.
Oh, no.
And that big company at Loretta's went from having like 4 or 5 trucks there for suspension. I don't think I've seen them at Loretta's more than a double wheel trailer at Loretta's.
Wow.
Eventually hang yourself if you're unscrupulous, and truth comes. I mean, we're already a small enough community. It doesn't take very long to be for the word to spread that I spent money on an aid kit and you didn't actually provide the internals. But arrogance is a funny thing. But if you come full circle, having a suspension specialist that could be sitting on the side of the track watching, you have what you have come to understand needs to be done. That person gives the eyeball. You merge those two together. Now you're doing what a factory team does, plus filming, which is another variable.
Yeah, it's all getting dialed in for you specifically, and that's the most important thing. And again, if you could find a good local suspension guy, do it. We have a guy here that I've been using for quite a while now. He rides with us. He's a vet guy.
Yep.
And he rides. He's a retired. Started doing suspension, years ago, kind of on the side. Retired from his day job. Now that's all he does is suspension.
Yep.
But he rides with us every weekend. So if I have a question, I can be like, hey, Chris, my bike's doing this, or he'll jump on my bike and go do a lap, right?
I love it.
That is so valuable. But, and another thing is, there's so many different things you could do to a motorcycle, and us vet guys, again, we love shiny parts. But I'm starting to put parts on at the track before, I'll go out and I'll ride, like say I'm changing engine mounts or something.
Yeah.
I'll go ride with stock engine mounts. I'll come back in, I'll change them and go right back out. That way you have a true test, because the track is never always the same.
That's right.
The prep could be different. You could have more bikes that day, so it's rougher. So I always try to do those changes at the track just so I can actually feel the difference. But I think as vet guys, man, we get wrapped up a lot in what we hear and what we see and what we read. Yeah. Don't take anything that I say as gospel. go out and do your own research. But I'm only giving you my experience. But, I love Chris Kiefer. Like Kiefer, I think is awesome at what he does. But a lot of people need to realize that we're not all Chris Kiefer.
Right.
What Chris Kiefer is feeling may be completely different than what I'm feeling or what you're feeling, right? So don't always take what somebody says as gospel. Go out there and try it for yourself, because what I like may not be what you like, Rob. And generally that's the case.
That's probably the most profound thing that I think anyone could take away from this first show, because you got to remember, Kiefer was racing pro not too long ago. Rhino was racing pro not too long ago. McGrath, Villopoto. They've put more hours on a track than we will in our entire life. Like if they never rode another day again, we would never be able to match the amount of hours that they've already got on a bike. It's like you and I comparing a car to a professional race car driver, right? You're not going to go and get Hamilton, who's going to give you the same feedback that you and I will, even if we've got in a McLaren. We're not going to be remotely close. So his feedback on it is not going to translate into us being faster in that car. And that's the thing that I think Kiefer does such a great job with, is he's always very verbal about, all right, don't forget. And he's not arrogant about it, but he's like, don't forget, I'm riding this at a much more aggressive level than probably 9 out of 10 of you will. This is what I was able to push it. Now, and then that's when you put all the circumstantial elements together to say, okay, should you go that stiff or that thick or that heavy on a spring setting? I know Derek Harris does quite a bit of that as well. That's a beautiful part with YouTube is there, as Jace with Gypsy Tales. The first time I flew to Australia to do a performance camp, Jace called me up because he heard we were in town, and he picked Michaela and I. We actually flew from a different part of Australia to just go do his show, and Jace was kind enough. He picked us up, and we were driving to his studio. And we get there, and again, they've got all these soundboards and lights and cameras and all this other stuff. And I said, Jace, being an American, right? Typical asinine question. I said, where'd you go to school? And he goes, man, there is a huge university here. It's called YouTube. He goes, I've never spent a day in a classroom ever. He says, all I did was just sit and study video after video after video, what to buy, when I bought it, how to set it up, once I set it up, how to use it. And Jace is like, I've never spent a day in a classroom environment doing it. And you look at people like Derek, who's willing to put those types of YouTube videos together. You're talking about the money shot right there. Yeah. Like, you don't have to be an engineer. He is. You don't have to wonder. He's already given you the Cliff Note version. If you and I want to become doctors, as we've said in one of our shows together, neither you nor I are going to go try to do it from scratch. You start reading books. You start watching video. You start learning from people who've been there and done that. Quickest way to learn. Well, that's what I think Derek does a great job as well, is he's so educated, and he does one of the best jobs I've ever seen is being able to put it into layman's terms. So I know it sounds dumb, but like, okay, I understand you said go 2 clicks. Explain to me why. And I think that's what Derek does really well. Yeah. Like you said, be careful. Don't just do it because somebody said do it.
Yeah.
Understand the why behind it. He said 2 clicks. You might only need 1, or you might need to go 3, but at least you understand the why. That's what I love about Derek. He's so in depth with that. But let's not forget, he's already an engineer. I don't need to go to school to understand the why behind it. I just need to understand the why to get what I want. A little bit slower, better tracking, maybe not pushing the front end, whatever it may be for that tracking condition. So I agree with you in regards to that. It's, you've got to find what works for yourself. But I think it goes back to, do you even know what you want? It's like if I were to ask you, Dan, if you were to turn back the clock to when you were 17 years old, could you tell me what you were looking for in a female? And the reason why I say that,
I mean, I probably could have.
See, I'm impressed that you could, because I'll never forget when my older son, one day we were out on the boat, we were wakeboarding, and he just made some comment about it. Oh, he says, I really like, tall brunettes. And I was like, wow, you're 17 years old and you can already articulate what you want. I guess I've just never really put it in those terms. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it may be a poor analogy, but it goes back to, it's really easy to say the bike's handling like shit. Well, what would in your terms make the bike handle golden for you today? You're already saying it's not handling well. What constitutes handling well? What does that mean? Like you say, the track's never the same. This is why Bones Bacon is so big on staying out there, as the track essentially emulates what Supercross will be at night at the test track.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just think that us as vet guys, man, we get there. It's weird. There's like two buckets of vet guys, right? There's the vet guy that wants to tinker, right?
Mm-hmm.
That they want to put different parts on and they want to, swap parts and tinker. That's what I'm into. I love doing that. And as I get older, I geek out more on that than anything, right? Just putting on new parts and going out, oh man, that was actually those engine mounts made it softer, in initial turn in, or, whatever it is, right? I like that stuff. You've got that group of people, and then you've got the other group of people that just, they take what they hear as gospel
Mm-hmm.
and don't ever try. Coach, you would be blown away at the amount of guys at the track that, oh man, I just got my suspension back from Factory Connection, man, and I don't know, it's I just not working real good for me. And I'm like, well, what is it doing? Oh man, I don't know, just a little soft. Well, have you touched the clickers? No, man, I don't want to touch the clickers. They set it up for me.
As I say, I gave him my weight and I told him I was an intermediate. Aren't they supposed to have this suspension?
You got to turn those. They gave you a baseline setting. Gotta. So
like you said earlier, they do turn. They're not there for a novelty.
Dude, you would think some of these old guys, man, those things are like concrete and super glued in.
Yep.
But they do turn. So
yeah. Well, and then you have the other guys that, and I say this very humbly for the people out there that are extremely wealthy, where they know they love moto. They don't have the time, right? They're at a point in their career where this is a show where we don't have to be politically correct. You have some people that they don't worry about this. Bezos isn't worried about what trucks they're purchasing. He's got a purchasing director that purchases the trucks. He's not worried about whether that truck is being on somebody's gas card. They've got CPAs and they've got HR directors that handle it. Bezos is at a different level, right? So you've got some guys that'll come to the track that are just like, they just expect it to be done. And there's nothing wrong with that as long as they know what they want and then they can tell somebody how they want it set up. Now you're back to a factory rider at the vet level.
Yeah.
Think about it. Tomac doesn't come in and grab something and start adjusting. And if he does, he's probably really pissed off about something and is trying to show somebody up. But it's tell me what you want, chassis, suspension, they all work on it to get the collective end unit. And that's what I think is, again, when we mentioned earlier in the show today, when you look at physiology, when somebody says they're struggling with cramping, that's not age specific, right? It's going to be either water, electrolytes, or not enough sugar, or a combination of the three, or just excessive amounts of load. I can throw those out at you real quick. Those are just physiological principles. Why would a muscle cramp? Dehydration, electrolyte depletion, just too much load on the tissue, or all the above. So when all of a sudden we hear Sexton or we hear Jet say, hey, and I think this is really cool. Did you see after the this past weekend when Kenny had to go to the LCQ for the first time? Yeah, yes. He won the LCQ by 20 seconds. But did you see as soon as he came in what he did? Him and his mechanic were nose to nose, and you could tell Roxon was talking about the bike.
Yep.
And yet we think, because we see them and they make it look so easy, they're so damn fast and so polished, they're not talking about what they're getting for dinner tonight. The whole time between practice, and it's all about setup,
yeah.
What the track's going to do, setup. And then you even hear them on the podium, how we went the wrong direction. Sexton says that quite a bit. We made an adjustment, like let's say Sexton comes out, wins a heat race, and then he just is off a little in the main. He's like, well, we made an adjustment, but we went the wrong way. We're okay if the pros say it, but then if we go the wrong direction, we think we're stupid. We start calling ourselves names and be harsh on ourselves.
Yeah.
Well, he's got 4 people in his corner trying to decide what's the right direction to go between a tire guy, a suspension guy, a chassis guy, a motor guy, a mechanic, and a team manager. 6 different people plus the rider himself.
Yeah.
So we go the wrong direction. We're like, well, that was stupid. Was it really? I don't think it was stupid. It was just, there's a difference between being stupid and going the wrong direction.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because, those guys are, they're very in tune with their bikes. They're very in tune with their setups, right? And they could say, hey, go in a click here on the compression, go out 2 on the rebound, right? And they'll be able to feel that. Chris Kiefer could feel that.
Mm-hmm.
Most of us general vet guys will never be able to fill 1 click.
Right.
We just won't. So if you're going to make an adjustment or a change, make a big one. Go 4 or 5 clicks in either direction.
Mm-hmm.
And because you'll be able to feel that. And then you'll be able to know if you went the right way. If you're softening up your compression and you go out, it's 5 clicks softer, you go out and you're like, man, that is way too soft. Well, then go in a couple clicks.
Sure.
And try to find that happy zone. But most of us will just, if we do turn the clickers at all, it's just like 1 at a time. And we will never feel that.
Yeah, it's too negible. And what I find is interesting is when you look at Webb, right, him being disgruntled with KTM, he wanted the bigger, he wanted the things different on the suspension, and they just told him no. Look at Barsha, his frustration with them changing the different fork size. And, for you and I, if they were to blind test us and say they put a 53 versus a 54 on there, on the forks, we wouldn't know.
Yeah.
We could say we could or would, but that's just us wanting to sound like we know something. Now, again, there's going to be a certain group of people that are listening to this that race the vet class that maybe, I'm not saying you put as many hours as Mike Brown and Jeff Emig have on a factory bike, but you might still be pretty close or better than the average. Please remember this podcast show is for just everybody who puts themselves in the vet category. And you're always going to have those few exceptions, no matter what we say, whether you're really, really smart with it or you're really, really not smart with it, we're all going to fall somewhere in the middle. So if we're saying something, you're like, oh, these guys are a bunch of idiots. Well, I don't think this group will, because we have to respect that there's people that have grown up where money was never an issue and they always had a mechanic. Well, maybe your whole life to this day, you still have a mechanic. You still have to be able to tell the mechanic what you want is what we're trying to get across, whether you're spinning the wrenches or someone else is doing it for you. Yeah. And even after Dunge got done riding, if Dunge goes out and rides with Spencer Daly and they go, you don't think that Dunge is making some adjustments to his bike? I think we forget about that. And again, this is not to be disrespectful to anybody or be taken out of context. The suspension that we're working with today is very, very sophisticated, but relatively easy to work on if you think about it. I was talking to Jeff Ward. I was talking to Jeff Ward when he had the Works KX 500. And, literally back in the day when we say Works, it was the unattainables all the way from front to back, right? Like he said, he wasn't quite sure what to do on any of it because it was truly unattainable. But then, as I said earlier, my first motorcycle was a 78 RM80. We had 7 inches of travel from the bottom of the tire to the top of the bottom of the fender. It was 7 inches, right? And now you go and you look at the KTM 85s that have, 13 inches of travel. Look at the internals on the front and the back of any 85 now. Remember when the 82 YZ80 came out and it was water cooled, had the radiator on the front forks, and we were like, oh my gosh, a water cooled mini bike. And then you start and you look at the full floater in 81 with Suzuki and the 125, and it was like, oh man, so cool. The full floater thing is just, like riding on marshmallows. My point being is, look at how far the internals have come and how easy they are to make adjustments in bone stock form. Because it's not like you only have 2 options front and back. There's an endless amount of options.
The range is big.
Very
range
big
is really big.
Yeah. So it goes back to, like you said, knowing what you want, and I encourage all my clients to do this, spend a weekend where your only goal is to go out and do exactly what you said. Start to learn suspension. Literally just drill it all the way in as far as it'll go and go ride it. What does that do? How does the bike handle? Go out 5 clicks. What's the difference? Why did it change? How did it change the characteristics of the bike? Tracking, handling, acceleration, deceleration. And I'm always amazed at this. And I guess this is maybe something, you've been to enough test tracks and you've seen test days. That's all these guys do.
Yep.
And I guess we take it for granted because we think they just get to go out and ride. No, they're just constantly changing pieces and parts and settings and this, that, and the next thing. And you hear that quite often when someone goes to a new team where they're like, we're done trying to set it up. Now we're just training. Yeah. That's a difficult stage to go to. Like with Sexton, and I think that's why he's had 2 really good races. You could talk about the internals and all that goes with it. There's a lot going on behind the scenes with that, running some WP inside, or was it KYB inside the internals there of the WP?
KYB internals, yep.
Yeah. But I guess in an indirect way, it does validate what we're talking about. Until you get it the way you want it, it doesn't matter what the outside sticker says. It's about the internals. But, when you look at Chase going from Honda, established platform for him, and then going over to KTM, he had to learn that platform. He had to learn the whole new team, the nuances, management. And how long did it take before he was able to actually go out and say, okay, today we're actually going to train. We're not just working on bike setup. I can't imagine what it's been for like the Triumph guys. That's why Caroli at Ducati is invaluable, because when it finally does get to who I think will be Hayden Deegan, when he does go over there, think about it. You've had Caroli shaking the bike down for 2.5 to 3 years, maybe even 4, because I'm sure the R&D started long before we were aware of it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's pretty powerful stuff when you think about it.
It is.
Which it makes sense why Ducati would put so much money in Caroli. Why? All of those hours of experience that we were talking about is being bought, and it just expedites the learning process. Ricky coming in at Triumph just expedites the Tedesco at Triumph expedites the process.
Yeah.
Those was it 10,000 hours to be a SME, subject matter expert?
Is that what it is? Yeah.
Yeah, it's 10,000 hours. So if you took Ricky and Tedesco, or you take somebody like Brock Tickle over at Cowie, and who wasn't it Weimer that was doing that before Tickle? Who was at Cowie?
Tickle's been there for a long time now.
Yeah, he has. I can't remember who was there.
I don't think Weimer was. Brock's been there for a bit, but
I was trying to think who was there before him though. And then I don't know who's doing Yamaha. I don't think Bill Opoto's doing it.
No, but I think
the point is every team has somebody doing that. Is the reason why I bring it up. Brock's probably been the most public figure that we've seen, and obviously Tedesco.
For Honda.
Actually, I think it was Tedesco was at Cowie for the longest time, wasn't it?
Yeah, he did a lot of work for
PC
Cowie. Yeah.
I don't know if you would consider him as a pre-Cowie guy before Tickle, and then now he's at Triumph. And then who was the one you just said? I apologize, I spoke over you.
Kennard at Honda.
Yeah, Kennard at Honda is a perfect example. And you just start stacking all of those years of experience, and then I won't say that the bikes are the R&D is not accelerating any quicker than it used to. I just think it's accelerating for different reasons. Like I would be very curious to look at like the R&D for factory Honda when Roger was there. Like I'm sure they had the equivalent of a Kennard or a Brock Tickle.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
I don't know who they were, but it'd be curious to see, but the good stuff.
Fun stuff. Well, Coach, we are at our hour. That went by fast. I didn't even get to the topics that I wanted to talk about.
Okay.
But sometimes that's just how it's going to go on these. We get into a groove and we just go there. That's what's cool about this one.
That's right. It's the People's Podcast, and like I say, we're those fanboys. We're fortunate enough that we get to rub elbows with certain people here and there, and we get to talk to them on the phone. But at the end of the day, we're still fans, and
we are.
And I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of questions come out, and we'll incorporate them. So.
Definitely.
If you stuck with us this long, thank you so much, everybody. As you always say, Dan, please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. That'll help us get a better idea of what you like and what you don't like. And leave comments, good, bad. If you're going to give negative, give us a reason why. We have thick skin. I've been told I've been ugly plenty of times. No, seriously, it's we want to know what you want, what don't you like, and we'll do our level best to make it the best show possible for you. But if you stuck with us this far, thank you so much, and we'll look forward to seeing you in less than a month.
Coach, thank you. Thank you for this. This is awesome. I'm looking forward to these upcoming episodes. They're going to be a lot of fun.
It'll be great. You guys be safe. Peace.